the inhumanity. It's like hell on earth over there.
Good morning, everybody. Hope your
hell on earth.
Evening went well. It was
which
another
is, of course,
really,
why
really
they want to devour
here.
Israel.
In Wichita,
and
with
attack
humidity
us
to
and
match,
blow up our cities.
we did get humidity
Which is
down
why
into the
Obama's
mid-60s
refusal
from
to
the,
take effective
pushing
action
80%.
when the attack on
The
Benghazi was
moisture
occurring
pump
is
kicked
such
in
an
again last night. We had
outrage,
big storms roll through.
scandal,
I mentioned we got,
which is why his
another
refusal
inch out
to
of it.
secure the border
So,
now today to blame it on the Tea Party and the House
we're in a very, very
Republicans
wet pattern.
is such an
I guess
abomination.
well over
You know what,
10
President,
inches of
Mr.
rain
President,
in
may I?
month, which
You're a
should
coward.
push us
You don't
close
stand behind the
to
failures of your own
good for the
policy.
corn and
You're a
bean and
coward.
Milo
You don't
slash
stand behind the
sorghum
failures of
clones, good for
Obamacare,
cattle,
immigration,
backgrounding,
you name it, the economy. It's
most
always
of the
somebody
cow-calf
else's fault.
operation in the
It's
United
always
States
somebody in history or the Tea Party
they
or what
bring
have
those
you.
cattle to Nebraska,
Utterly irresponsible
Oklahoma,
and
Kansas,
incompetent. And, of course, an ideologue.
Put them on grass.
You don't accept responsibility for anything.
8 months, depending on where the cattle are going to get.
And then you keep demanding more power and exercising more power if people don't go along with your destruction.
Well underway.
Well, we're not going to go along with your destruction. Shove your pen in your phone.
Of a new month, July, seasonal favor
And
of
quote
strong
me on
stock
that.
market close. The Fed.
William, Hofstra University, New York, college student, the great WABC. How are you, sir?
Yeah, how you doing, Mark? How you doing, brother?
Very well, thank you, sir.
I just want to say, I mean, I'm very, I'm slightly pleased, with the Supreme Court decision today because I feel that, it defies the tyrant, that we call this president from, completely trampling the Constitution and the First Amendment. But, actually, the crack in the pie would sure explain a lot of the actions lately. The crack in the
Well, I will say this to you, William. First of all, putting the crack aside, shouldn't they be eating like spinach? Isn't she compelling our public schools to get rid of all that stuff?
Yeah, and meanwhile they're talking about pies. I'm reading your book, Liberty and Tyranny, and I'm really loving it. But the thing is, I'm very concerned about the next election because, the Republicans and everything and how they're bashing, the conservatives and everything. I don't even know if I want them to win at this point, or if they will.
Anyway, the stock market is up, financials
concerned
are
about
down.
the future.
There's another factor
Here's the bottom line. If they lose, it's because they cost themselves the election.
Right.
If they win, they will claim some kind of a mandate that they don't have.
The auction.
The fact of the matter is, of course, we want to take the Senate. That said, there's a lot of fear-mongering going on that's not true. How are they going to stop Obama from using his pen and his phone? Has anybody talked about the power of the purse? Has not Mitch McConnell attacked the likes of Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and others for proposing to use the power of the purse to prevent Obama on Obamacare, and they were attacked, and McConnell said, we will not shut down the government. Boehner said, we will not shut down the government. Well, if you're not going to use the power of the purse, you're not going to use the impeachment power, whether you agree with it or not, then what power are you going to use? And the fact of the matter is, William, I looked at these votes on Supreme Court justices, on Sotomayor and Kagan. They received a ton of Republican votes for confirmation. This idea that the Republicans will stand up and block an Obama nominee only if it's a real radical nut job. And yet look at Sotomayor and Kagan and Ginsburg and so forth. What are they? Are they mainstream liberals? Well, they were voted for. The last two, the Obama nominees, by a hell of a lot of Republicans. I don't know. They keep talking about if we elect them, how great it's going to be. Tell me, has Mitch McConnell put out a plan to replace Obamacare? No, he hasn't. Why? Has Mitch McConnell put out a plan to deal with the next debt ceiling issue? What it is we're supposed to get from Obama? What he wants to trim? Not a word. But what exactly will they do? Just trust them, ladies and gentlemen. Just trust them. Good call, William. Good luck on your college classes next semester. Take care. Call again. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We will see that unfold in front of our very eyes this morning. Do you like the short side better than the 11 the long side to get started this morning? Buy it on the cheap. May take 25 to get on.
By the way, Obama said time and time and time again today. I don't know if he's delusional or not, and it really doesn't matter.
That also reflects primary dealers.
But the American people want something done. The American people want the border secured for obvious reasons. But there's a new Gallup poll. 41% of Americans want immigration levels to decrease rather than increase. Just 22% want levels to increase. That's nearly a 2-to-1 margin. By party identification, 50% of Republicans, 43% of independents, and 32% of Democrats want to see the flow of immigrants reduced. Got that with cubes on Capitol Hill? By the way,
could take us higher.
John McCain, in an interview with a paper in Arizona, was celebrating how Thad Cochran was able to turn out the black vote to support him and said, isn't this what we want to do? So whomever chooses to run against John McCain, since that jerk, that's right, I said it, if that jerk seeks to run for office again. I
don't know. A lot of it's just dependent upon the news, but we're going to play for selling.
You use the Thad Cochran slimeball tactics against John McCain because he thinks it's great. Yes, it's great.
Volume was lower.
And he said we got to learn from this. Well, we've learned from it.
Volume is moving lower.
We've learned from it.
So right now,
Johnny, I hope you run. I really do, so we can find a really strong conservative to defeat you. Because you are a war hero, but politically an absolute menace. I might even say a screwball.
On the sell side, we've got a pretty clean break here at 26. Last trade's 20. It's pretty aggressive. 23 to 27. Sell 31 to 03. Sell.
The Mark Levin Show, live and national at 877-381-3811.
You know, I thought I'd bring my buddy Dan Stein, president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, or FAIR, on the program to help me sort this out. He's also a partner in this program and supports it, and we are greatly appreciative of that. Dan, how are you?
Dan, Mark, it's always great to talk to you.
Well, it's a great pleasure, and want people to know you've been fighting this battle for over 3 decades. And, well, look, the president comes out today. He blames the Tea Party and the House Republicans for what's going on the southern border because they won't pass comprehensive immigration reform. My view on this, Dan Stein, is they don't know who's coming across that border. We know that terrorists and criminals look for opportunities like this, and Obama wants to position himself if something should happen.
Well, you helped make history in beating back the Senate bill that Chuck Schumer drafted. Everybody calls comprehensive immigration reform, but nobody drills down on the specifics. And today the president went out and once again refused to address the reality that his policies, the series of policies articulated by this administration, have helped lead directly to this crisis on the border. And you can tick off what those reasons are.
Here we are at 26.
No point did he concede any mistakes in his own public policy. At no point is he prepared to concede the idea that by dismantling interior law enforcement, by creating this illegal so-called DACA program for younger people brought here when they were younger, by creating the non-enforcement priorities of the Department of Homeland Security, and by continually screaming and hollering for amnesty, he set off this tidal wave. And the so-called Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 has now been amended 4 times since then. A law that was supposed to actually try to prevent immigration trafficking has actually created all these special avenues for relief that have in fact been exploited by traffickers and smuggling operations who now see this thing as a big loophole. So it is hard to imagine having somebody who is in charge of the executive branch who has such little capacity to understand how to execute the law. And I don't really think I think Americans need to understand the country's in great danger.
A lot of that's the
that a country, you cannot limit what you cannot control.
Okay, right here we are at 2680.
You usurp unilaterally the unlimited authority to just let millions of people come into this country. Remember, if the president stops people coming in who under law can come in, the ACLU has standing to litigate, and if you've addressed before about standing. What a lot of our supporters don't understand is how can it be the president can violate the law involving millions of aliens, and no American has the ability to go to court to get it stopped, and yet if one alien arguably is not admitted under this labyrinthian immigration system we have, the ACLU can litigate that to the Supreme Court. And it's that imbalance. It's the idea that Obama is pressing against an open door when we've always warned for years, Mark, that in the hands of a rogue administration, an ideological rogue, unprincipled executive, it's no different than failing to carry out the core functions as a commander-in-chief to defend our borders or defend our country.
And Dan, I just want to slide out. These left-wing groups have standing because Congress conferred standing.
Well, only in the environmental context. I mean, they've got standing because the alien, who's already in the United States. Remember, it's a basic principle of immigration control. You want the alien to apply for admission from outside the country. The minute the alien has an advantage by breaking the law, and his arguments to come into the country, the alien has standing, and it's almost impossible to get him out, particularly if they have a good lawyer. Now, Eric Holder has said all these aliens are going to get lawyers at taxpayer expense. And you know what, Mark? There's no end in sight. Nothing the president said today in the Rose Garden directly addressed how he's going to stop this crisis, how he's going to keep it from spreading all over the world, how taxpayers are going to continue to pay for endless procedural process, and he flat out lied when he made the statement that they were going to actually go back home. Under the current immigration law, the way it's practiced, there's simply no way most of these younger people are going to ever go home.
And he won't send the National Guard down there. Why is that?
The president is in lockstep with an extreme constituency that has an overarching ideology. The president no longer talks about immigration policy in an honest way. I don't think we've heard honest policy coming from the Democratic Party on immigration policy since the Clinton administration. But under this administration, everything is about politics. It's all about the lens of trying to polarize the Latino voters hostily to against the Republican Party. And they, essentially the Democrats and the president have boxed themselves in a corner. They've created a situation by which the country's virtually losing control, has lost control of the borders. And yet, if they change the narrative, the spin, and suddenly turn around and say, all right, we're going to get tough on the borders, the president said he was just sending a letter to the House demanding a change to this trafficking law to give him, unilateral repatriation authority. He didn't mention that today. He said he was going to ask for $2 billion to handle the processing of all these people coming across the border. He didn't mention that. Instead, all he did was blame Congress, blame the Republicans in the House for not passing a Senate amnesty bill that would have done nothing to solve the border crisis we're dealing with now, for why we have the border crisis.
Now, Dan Stein, as I recall, when George W. Bush was president, they did damn little to fund that double fence down there, too.
Well, as you know better than most of us out there, the Republican Party has a top-line wing that's in the pockets of the Chamber of Commerce. And historically, the business community has been very aggressive, particularly big agriculture on border security and opposing these needed things. But there comes a point at which patriotism, sovereignty, the idea of national self-determination have to take hold if the country's to survive. This unholy alliance that's going on at the top of both political parties, where the far left wants to re-engineer the electorate and the corporate wing of the Republican Party wants so-called cheap labor, is leading us directly to the bullseye of disaster. And people are going to have to collectively stand up, whether it's to demonstrate down at the border. Right now, Obama's got these DACA dreamers out there invading members of Congress's offices. They went into Darrell Iss's office, and harassed him. We got Boehner can't have breakfast without getting... The idea that illegal aliens are actually going into the faces of our elected officials and essentially trying to intimidate them.
Is there any other country on the face of the earth where that would be tolerated?
Well, you will not simply not have a country any longer, Mark, if you continue to allow lawlessness to be rewarded, to violate the core fundamentals of the American social contract. The core of what makes us together collectively function as a civil society is the idea that if we play by the rules, if you play by the rules and I play by the rules, we have a shot at the American dream and to be part of this great country. This administration, look, nobody's going to deny that the Republican Party isn't in part culpable because, as you have people in both parties who sometimes go off the reservation. But the Democratic Party right now has unilaterally decided that we should accommodate unlimited unlimited immigration by whatever means necessary. And it's a very dangerous situation for the country.
What do you make of libertarians who, contrary to Milton Friedman and other leading libertarians in the past, and the Wall Street Journal editorial page, that just keep arguing, in essence, for these open borders? And, you know, to me, if you don't secure the border right now, if you don't work on that, then you are for amnesty, because there is no end in sight for people pouring over the border. I don't care how many laws you pass. If you don't secure that border. And yet we still have people who claim to be conservatives, who claim to be libertarians, who are editorial writers, who reject Milton Friedman and others, who say when you have a massive welfare state, you can't have open borders. It's just that simple.
Well, you know, look, a prudential libertarian who understands that if newcomers coming in vote big government transfer payments, that's not libertarianism.
These guys make us pay up.
But what you have are a lot of professional, quote, libertarians who are just the handmaidens of cheap labor, big corporate interests. So most of the libertarian professionals out there throw out an ideological idea that the world would be perfect if we had no borders, realizing that they're never going to have to be tested for the reality of it, since that's probably never going to completely come about. But any kind of rational libertarian understands that if you want to maximize freedom, you have to have basic control over your borders. Otherwise, look, you swamp the country. Now we have this national health system, all these entitlements. Every one of these young people coming in now, they're going to be enrolled in public school. That's what, $15,000, $17,000 a year taxpayer for each one of them, with no end in sight. There are very few libertarians who argue open borders publicly for very long. In fact, Cato Institute keeps turning over its experts because after 3 or 4, a couple of years out there trying to argue this position on, they get tired of everybody making, fun of them all the time.
And what do you make of the Wall Street Journal editorial page? Are they so beholden to the corporatists and so forth that they're just blinded by this?
Yes, they are. There's no downside for the Wall Street Journal to argue this, because it serves the function of giving them this badge of tolerance. Nobody can say they're corporate elitists. Nobody can say that they're not for the average person if they're out there on the side of the little guy who's running across the border wanting to work all day.